The National Desk, America's News Now. Now a special counsel appointed in the Hunter Biden investigation. What this means and why Republicans are still not satisfied.
This was a political decision, not a legal decision. They're trying to put out a fire, and they just poured gasoline on it.
Then mass evacuations continuing as wildfires ravage Hawaii. Why some residents say they had little time to prepare before flames and explosions closed in on them.
But so many of us residents felt like we had absolutely no warning.
And hospitalized after eating ice cream, where people got sick and the soft serve that had them seeking help. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Eugene Ramirez. A major development today in the probe into the president's son, Hunter Biden. Attorney General Merrick Garland has elevated Trump-appointed prosecutor David Weiss to special counsel, giving him additional resources and independence in his ongoing investigation into Biden.
This appointment confirms my commitment to provide Mr. Weiss all the resources he requests. It also reaffirms that Mr. Weiss has the authority he needs to conduct a thorough investigation and to continue to take the steps he deems appropriate independently, based only on the facts and the law.
Now, Weiss requested that appointment Tuesday after a plea deal that would have kept Hunter Biden out of jail was rejected in court. The judge questioning whether it would give Hunter Biden immunity from prosecution on future findings should that investigation be ongoing. Well, today's development comes as House Republicans are attempting to connect the president to his son's deals with foreign entities, but they've failed to do so far. And President Biden has maintained he was not involved in his son's business affairs and has denied being aware of any wrongdoing. So what does today's news mean for Hunter Biden? National correspondent Atra Elnashar breaks it down.
In perhaps the clearest sign yet that Hunter Biden could face deep legal trouble, U.S. Attorney David Weiss has been elevated to special counsel in his probe of the president's son's business deals.
On Tuesday of this week, Mr. Weiss advised me that in his judgment, his investigation had reached a stage at which he should continue his work as a special counsel.
This as prosecutors drop misdemeanor tax charges they previously filed against Hunter Biden, now saying in a court filing, quote, the case will not resolve short of a trial. Former U.S. Attorney John Fishwick.
It's a bad day at the office for Hunter Biden. I think this means it's a much more serious investigation. He's likely to, if he does eventually plead guilty, it'll be a much tougher deal. He's much more likely to be looking at prison time.
Fishwick explains Weiss, who was appointed by former President Trump and has been investigating Hunter Biden for 5 years, will now have more independence from the DOJ.
He'll have more power. He will not have to seek permission from other U.S. attorneys if he wants to bring charges against Hunter Biden, say in California or the District of Columbia, which is what he's signaling he wants to do.
In a statement to multiple outlets, Hunter Biden's lawyer Chris Clark says, quote, whether in Delaware, Washington, D.C., or anywhere else, we expect a fair resolution on behalf of our client. News of the special counsel designation isn't inspiring confidence from Republicans. Instead, many are doubling down on their accusations that Hunter Biden is benefiting from a two-tiered system of justice.
What they've tried to do is give Hunter Biden a deal that no other American would get. The judge asked hard questions. The plea agreement blew up. And to think that the very guy who wrote the plea agreement is seriously going to continue to investigate the Bidens is laughable.
This news also raises questions about the future of House Republicans' investigations into alleged corruption by the Biden family. A key player in that, Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer says they're going to keep interviewing witnesses. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who's floated the idea of an impeachment inquiry, also says his party will continue to investigate. In Washington, I'm Atra Elnashar.
Developing now, 6 wildfires still actively burning throughout Maui, Hawaii's Big Island as well, ravaging thousands of acres, destroying hundreds of buildings and much of the historic town of Lahaina. Now, the death toll has climbed to at least 55 and could increase still tonight since the inside of buildings have not been searched just yet. Now, power and cell service are slowly coming back, but more than 10,000 people are still in the dark today. Mass evacuations continue and tourists have been rushing to leave as soon as possible. Hawaii Airlines is still offering some inexpensive flights for urgent travel. Governor Josh Green saying that the fires are likely the biggest natural disaster in Hawaii's history. Vice President Kamala Harris says the White House is watching the situation closely. Hawaii emergency management records show no indication that any warning sirens went off before people had to flee for their lives. Alan Vu lost his home and restaurant. Here's what he had to say.
No real warning like the amber alerts or the storms that we would normally get that would vibrate and make loud noises from our phones. We didn't get any of that. There was no sirens.
Officials say they sent alerts to cell phones and radio stations, but the outages may have limited those. Hawaii says it has the largest integrated outdoor all-hazard public safety warning system in the world with roughly 400 sirens. But still, survivors say that they did not receive enough of a warning time to get out of there. Governor Green said it's too early to tell if Maui's siren system was activated properly. New tonight, a mixed ruling today in former President Donald Trump's case surrounding the events of January 6. U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan is allowing the public release of much of the evidence the prosecution will share with the defense, but issued a protective order keeping Trump from disclosing sensitive materials. Now, prosecutors wanted to block all public disclosures, but the judge sided with the government with a more lenient definition of what sensitive means, blocking more documents from release. The judge warned Donald Trump from making inflammatory public comments about the case while on the campaign trail, telling his lawyers, your client's defense is supposed to happen in the courtroom, not on the internet. She also noted, quote, arguably ambiguous statements could be construed as intimidation or harassment of potential witnesses. The judge said not following this order would speed up the timeline for a trial. Meantime, we're learning attorneys for President Joe Biden have been in touch with special counsel Robert Hur to discuss if and when the president can be interviewed and what the scope of the questions would be regarding the investigation and into his handling of classified documents. No agreements have been made just yet, but Robert Hur, the prosecutor, has been looking into this case since January of this year. Assault-style weapons are still banned in Illinois following a 4-3 ruling today from the state Supreme Court upholding that law. It was introduced in January and prohibits assault-style rifles and high-capacity magazines. It's faced legal challenges since then, and from people saying that it violates the Illinois and U.S. constitutions. Vice President Kamala Harris was in Chicago today speaking at the Everytown for Gun Safety Conference. Harris said that gun violence is a public health issue. She told young people that they mean everything for solving the problem and that their help is critical. She also reiterated her views on legislation she believes is necessary.
I believe in the Second Amendment, but I also believe we need to renew the assault weapons ban. We need red flag laws. We need universal background checks.
Before that event, the vice president held a private meeting with gun safety activists and gun violence survivors. Developing now, investigations are ongoing for the cause of a fire that killed 3 people and injured 3 others, and also destroyed a historic oceanfront cottage in the Outer Banks today. 2 adults and a teen died in that fire in Kill Devil Hills. They were all vacationing there in that beachside town. Now, last night, another home in the Outer Banks, this one in the town of Duck, was destroyed by fire when authorities say it was struck by lightning. Both occupants of that property escaped without injury. To your money now, and wholesale prices edging up a bit in July, 0.8% over last year's July numbers. This is last month's prices had dropped over the previous year. Now, these numbers reflect prices from farmers, manufacturers, and wholesalers. They could indicate what consumer prices, what we pay, what that will look like in the weeks and months ahead. Food prices are also up by almost 5% from a year ago. That's led by increases in beef, pork, and veal. But there were decreases in some things like eggs, for example, dairy products, and frozen seafood as well. The Biden administration asking for another $20 billion for Ukraine. This coming at a time when most Americans are questioning the support that the U.S. is giving to that situation. National correspondent Jenny Bowens explains.
The request for more Ukraine aid is fueling a growing political debate about the future of U.S. support for the war in Ukraine.
Coming back to Congress and to the American people saying we need to steal more of your money to give to them. And I think of it this way. Inflation is high, interest rates are high. All of this is a result of government spending.
Republicans continue to voice concerns about U.S. involvement and effectiveness.
I haven't voted for a dime to send Ukraine. I'm for Ukraine. Russia should have never done this. They can't win. We can throw all the money we want to, but unless we send NATO and our troops over, which we're not going to do if I've got anything to do with it, then there's no chance.
The U.S. has been a fierce supporter for Ukraine ever since Russia invaded last year. And Congress has already approved $113 billion in aid for Ukraine. And with this latest request, that would bring that number up to $133 billion.
And I don't want to see the day that the Russian army crosses a border where we have to go fight them and meet them. Let's give Ukraine what they need to beat them now. drive them out.
But a recent poll from CNN found 55% of Americans believe Congress should not authorize additional funding to support Ukraine. 48% say that the U.S. needs to do more. That number down from 62% back in February 2022, with double-digit drops in support among independents and Republicans. Reports also show much of the most expensive and powerful U.S. weapons and vehicles given to Ukraine have been destroyed.
It's got everybody between a rock and a hard place. They've already caused the deficit of military equipment. So do we now steal from Americans to pay to replace the stockpiles? Or do we go with a dangerously low stockpile of these weapons and equipment?
The big question now is how long and how much should the U.S. support Ukraine?
And Janae Bowen's joining us now from Washington. Janae, what does all of this mean for the average American? It's such a big number, it's hard to wrap your head around.
Right. So according to Richard Stern, who you just heard from in the piece, right now, currently, the aid is costing every American household around $900. Now, if that request were to be granted, that number would go up to $1,100 per household. Eugene?
Okay, Janae Bowen's in Washington, D.C. Thank you. And impeached and suspended Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton now subject to a federal grand jury investigation. In San Antonio, Texas, the grand jury is calling witnesses focusing on Paxton's ties to indicted real estate developer Austin Paul. All of this part of a growing legal problem there for Paxton as he faces securities fraud charges as well as an impeachment trial scheduled to begin in September. Prosecutors found 47 weapons and 26,000 rounds of ammo in the home of California Superior Court Judge Jeffrey Ferguson, who's been charged in the murder of his deceased wife, Cheryl Ferguson. Judge Ferguson also faces 2 felony gun-related charges. He's been released on bail, but prosecutors are seeking further restrictions because of what they found there. Coming up here on the National Desk, a possible shakeup in the Republican presidential primary. The candidate who's climbing fast in a new poll. Then the government could launch a formal review of a cancer-causing chemical that public health activists say should have been banned years ago. And people finding themselves in the hospital after eating ice cream, the brand you may want to avoid or toss out at least for now. I'll tell you all about it when we come back in 90 seconds. Taking a look at a new poll today that shows a possible shakeup in the GOP primary, spelling bad news for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Signal Polling and Analytics has Vivek Ramaswamy now overtaking the Florida governor and coming out now in second place, only following Donald Trump. This survey has former President Trump at 53%, Ramaswamy at 11%, DeSantis trailing him now at just 10%. But Real Clear Politics polling average still has DeSantis with a 9% lead over Ramaswamy. The Republicans are set for their first debate in 2 weeks as the field looks to gain on Donald Trump. And developing now, the FDA investigating a possible listeria outbreak in contaminated ice cream that was sold in 19 states across the country. New York-based Real Kosher Ice Cream has recalled several flavors of its soft serve on the go after at least one person in New York and another in Pennsylvania became ill. In fact, they both ended up in the hospital after eating the vanilla chocolate ice cream. No deaths have been reported in connection to this. And by the numbers now, suicide in the United States reaching an all-time high. That's according to some new numbers from the CDC. 49,500 Americans killed themselves in 2022, up by more than 1,000 from the year before. Now, the biggest jumps were in older adults, with very high rates seen in white men. Suicide jumping to the second leading cause of death for ages 25 to 44. But in ages 10 to 24, it declined by more than 8%. The Energy Department announcing its biggest investment yet in a relatively new technology to combat climate change, engineered carbon removal. Now, this process captures carbon dioxide from the air and stores it underground. The technology doesn't exist on a large scale just yet, but the Biden administration is awarding up to $1.2 billion to 2 carbon capture projects. The EPA also indicated that they may begin a formal review of the risks posed by vinyl chloride. It's a cancer-causing chemical that burned off after the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. Vinyl chloride is found in PVC piping, vinyl siding as well, and car parts, among other things. Public health activists say that the chemical should have been banned years ago. FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried is in jail after a New York judge revoked his bail today. Prosecutors had argued that Bankman-Fried tried to harass a witness. His lawyers said he was trying to protect his reputation, though. Bankman-Fried now awaits his criminal trial, which starts on October 2nd. Around 14,000 people were evacuated from their homes today in Lublin, Poland, after construction workers uncovered an unexploded 550-pound bomb believed to be from World War II. Military engineers successfully removed and neutralized that giant explosive, and the residents were able to return home eventually. But more bombs are now being found there as this construction in the area continues. And China has detained a Chinese national that it suspects is spying for the CIA. The country says the CIA was paying a military industrial worker with the last name Zheng for military secrets. The suspect reportedly started spying after meeting a CIA agent in Italy. And then last week, the U.S. arrested 2 U.S. Navy sailors over claims of giving military secrets to China. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. We do have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. Right now, we're taking the pulse of America.
Follow down, I'll call your stop. You should be in the bushes now.
The El Paso border sector is starting to see an increase in migrant apprehensions at the border. According to Border Patrol, for the month of August, they're seeing an average of 823 apprehensions a day.
Yeah, just wait for one more.
Go for it. While on the ride-along, there were 2 groups that crossed into the U.S. While Border Patrol was able to catch one group, 2 migrants ran away, one got caught, but the other led agents on an intense pursuit.
And we have to be going through these fences a lot of the times, multiple fences going through this property. Now you're going to add the dogs, right? That's a big one. You know, I made sure, I whistled a few times, see if there was a dog in that property. Now you're going to add the extreme heat.
Due to the demanding temperatures here in the borderland, heat-related injuries and deaths have increased.
Marcella is homeless in Soto.
We are human beings, and we are looking for shelter.
And she doesn't have to look far. She's camping outside a lot that is storing all these unused tiny homes. When you go to sleep at night on the streets here and you know those tiny homes are sitting there, what do you feel?
Betrayed.
While these tiny homes sit empty, encampments are still filling up in Seattle. People are dying. This person overdosed today at a new encampment that's forming down the block from an encampment that exploded by Harborview Medical Center.
One of the reasons I love the tiny home village concept is it's very rapid. We don't have to wait 4 years to build a building. We can get people in a few months.
Governor Inslee has said repeatedly he wants more tiny homes and faster.
Several Hanford residents woke up to find these small bags weighted with rocks outside their homes Thursday.
So we received this on our lawn early this morning, and it seems to be some kind of pro-white propaganda. I mean, it's scary, this kind of world we live in. We should all be united
Police say the unknown individuals left the racist flyer featuring a call to action for European men and women, along with a link around neighborhoods in Northeast Hanford. One homeowner did not want to go on camera but says she was disgusted with the finding. When she went back to look at her cameras, she spotted a car around 9 Wednesday night pulling up to her house, throwing it out of the window and onto her driveway. Hanford police say they attempted to pick up and throw away as many flyers as they came across in town.
Coming up here on the National Desk, there's often a debate about whose job it is to instill growth and maturity in kids. Is it the parents or is it the teachers? We're going to look at that coming up here after this break. Right now, debate over who's responsible for instilling growth and maturity in kids. Is it the teachers or is it the parents? The National Desk's Brian Schnee reports from Salt Lake City, Utah.
In 2023, schools are under the microscope.
Okay, read through the paper once.
Whether it's the books being read,
if they have those forces between them,
or the content being taught.
I don't understand why that would ever be a split, why there would ever be a division there. It boggles my mind.
Curriculum aside, teachers are educating students from all walks of life.
We have students who come who are hungry and so they can't learn. We have students who have parents who are less engaged for a variety of reasons. Oftentimes it's because they're working 2 and 3 jobs just to try and make ends meet.
Deborah Gatrell, who's been in education for more than a decade, sees it every day.
So maybe they're not supervising the children. Maybe they're not making sure that they're getting their homework done. And maybe they're learning English themselves and so they can't read to their children. So all of those struggles come into our classrooms too.
Gatrell says it needs to be a partnership between teachers and parents to build maturity and growth for children.
There's no reason for anyone to try and divide us and pit us against each other because that's destructive.
What would you describe as the role of the parent as it pertains to education?
Parents have the ultimate responsibility for educating their children.
Christine Fairbanks with the Sutherland Institute, an education think tank. Do you feel like in recent years maybe there's been more of a burden on the teacher?
Definitely. Definitely. Teachers, I think, are being asked to not only teach, but to identify problems that are happening in the student's personal life.
Fairbanks, who used to be a teacher, also feels the parent-teacher partnership is crucial. In her research, she says studies have shown parent engagement has a strong impact in student outcomes.
We hope that teachers are models of responsibility, of ethics, of respect, and how they treat everyone. And I mean, they're very often the role models of students as well, outside the home.
I think about my oldest son.
High school teacher Kelsey Flint also has 2 children in the public education system.
Being able to partner with his teachers in class over the last 3 years.
And balances the role of teacher and parent.
I can't even explain the growth that has occurred because we were able to partner with his teachers in that way.
You mentioned that partnership. Is there a certain responsibility on the teacher and a certain responsibility on the parent, you feel?
I think parents are primarily responsible for the nurture and growth of their children. Like they are the parents.
However, over the years, additional challenges arising from what children are dealing with at home appears to be front and center.
The pandemic was hard. It was very difficult, and we took a lot of that brunt.
What are you seeing today stemming from that?
Maybe it could be that we're more aware of it, but when I think about my first few years teaching compared to now, I think there's a lot more emotional needs, maybe a little bit less maturity.
Flint and Gatrell acknowledge that teachers can't solely hold the keys to help students grow.
And don't underestimate your power as a parent to influence your children, because we certainly would never try to interfere with what you think is best at home.
And what's happening at home directly impacts the classroom.
This time more than ever, we need to come together. We need to assume the best about each other. We need to assume that the other person has our child's best interests at mind, because I can't think of a single educator I work with who doesn't have the child's best interest at heart.
I'm Brian Schnee reporting.
What's an imperative sentence? Okay.
Well, stargazers have something to look forward to this weekend. We're going to tell you what and how you can see it when we come back. There is a show in the sky this weekend, the Perseid Meteor Shower, peaking tomorrow and Sunday. It'll be visible in both the north and southern hemispheres, and in the U.S. and Canada, the conditions are supposed to be great for a good light show. Now, for the best view, you want to look to the northeast. Dozens of meteors will fly through the sky each hour. That's according to the Abrams Planetarium. And people are advised to find a spot with little or no light pollution if possible. And of course, we need to hope it's not going to be cloudy where you're at. Now, if you miss it, you'll be able to see this through September 1st, because this just keeps going through then. That's going to do it for us right now. Join me tonight for the evening edition of the National Desk. You want to check your local listings for the exact time. I'm Eugene Ramirez. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.